Hey everyone! In this video, I'm gonna talk a bit about my approach on character design, particularly for my comics. Like what kind of thoughts I have and which questions do I ask myself when designing characters. I hope it would help any of you that think your characters are maybe too bland or boring. So let's get started. First of all, a disclaimer. This is not advice from a professional artist, but more so my opinion, which is always evolving. My paying job is web designer, and I only do illustrations and draw comics as a passion. It doesn't bring any revenue, and as such, none of my thoughts are aimed towards a potential client, so keep that in mind for the rest of the video. Now that this is out of the way, let's start with things in order of my thought process. First is what world this character will be a part of. Maybe this is because I love writing stories, but it helps me to put the character in a certain world. It makes it easier in the design process on the next phase, when the world is settled and you can work with a set of limitations, and I also think it makes your character a lot more believable. For example, does this character live in our world, in our age? Is it a world with some kind of superpower or maybe a magic system? Is it fantasy or real? Are there any rules decided for this power system? What's life like where he lives? Geography, weather? All these exterior factors will have an influence on the appearance of your character. You just need to take a look at our world to see that. If you pick someone at random living in the middle of the Sahara Desert and someone living in the northern tundra, chances are they'll be very different, from their bodies to their clothes and everything. Everything is adapted to their lifestyle and location. The same will go for your character. His environment will be reflected in a part of his outer appearance. The clothes he wears, for example, are a good indicator of where he lives, what is his status condition, in what period does he live also. A lot of factors come into play and can be reflected just by his garments. Next would be, what is the purpose of your character? His profession, his goal, his aim, what he does daily and what he aims for. The daily activities of someone will be reflected in his body, especially if it's a physical job. I like to exaggerate the physical features to make it quickly recognized by the viewer. For example, if your character is an old lumberjack, I'll make it so his hands and his forearms tell the story. He'll be having like thick and gnarly hands and marks of labor on the arms, scars, veins, whatever. On the contrary, if the dude was a piano player, his hands would be thin and a lot more delicate. A lot can be told with a character's hands as they are our everyday tools and will reflect what we use them for. And then we get to the face, and here, contrary to the real world, where any personality can hide behind any face, I like to give hints of the character's personality traits through his facial features. This is mostly done with the eyes and eyebrows, which are the tells of emotion. You can really capture a certain personality within a character's base expression. What I mean by base expression is, what does his face look like when he's neutral, like just looking out in the distance. Squinted eyes and frowned eyebrows will indicate a more rough character, while opening his eyes more and a lit expression indicates more of a happy-go-lucky kind of type. Following the important hands and face, I think the overall shape of the body and posture is also an indicator of the character's lifestyle and personality to a minor level. This is a minor point for me because I'm still at a level where the bodies I draw are fairly standard and not really stylized, but I work on trying to bring more importance to the overall shape of the body and exaggerate these shapes to add more uniqueness, let's say, to the characters, or at least the main characters. We can really see this in like all the Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks animation movies. The characters will usually have very different body shapes to indicate their uniqueness. And then we come to the clothing part, and this one is a sticking point for me. Keeping in mind that my point of view is heavily influenced by the fact that most of my characters, I imagine, are the ones I like to integrate in my webcomic, and that's exactly why I do not like when a character always has the same set of clothes, almost like his trademark uniform. I'd much rather give him some clothing preferences and have the clothes be swapped once in a while in the story. I think it helps a lot with the narration, and if you want to make it clear that days are passing by in the story. On the other hand, if the character has a job that demands a particular set of clothes, then it's a good thing to have this sort of recognizable uniform. But I think it's always good to give it a justification of why he stays with that same uniform. Like, I want to know why he is wearing this, even if the reason is absurd. At least it gives us a clue to the character's mind. Also, while I do like to accessorize a bit the main characters, since I draw them a lot, I tend to avoid putting too much detail in their clothing. Otherwise, a huge amount of time would be spent just drawing their clothes, bringing the focus out of the story. But if you draw these characters without the intention to repeat them in a lot of comic panels, for example, or animation maybe, or if they're just a rarely seen character, by all means go crazy and have fun with a detailed wardrobe. It can be very rewarding. And finally, once all of these questions are answered, I can begin to have a pretty good idea in my head of what this character will look like. And to this mind image, I'll then add some unique appearance features that comes from the character's past. Giving him a backstory, even a small one, helps to flesh out the character as believable and relatable. If he also has physical or mental quirks that stem from his past, it's easy to remind the viewer where he comes from and justify his actions during the story by giving them meaning. So all in all, my advice would be to write your character before you start drawing it, and the same form follows function thing you can usually hear. And that's about it for me. Well, these are all the steps I usually go through when I want to start a new character, but I don't really know where to start. I find it easier to end up with a cool character when I think of him first and not draw just because I want a cool appearance or something. Otherwise, I tend to end up with the same usual stereotypes and repeat them too often. If this happens to you too and you're not satisfied with the characters you create, maybe try to give it a bit more time to the research phase when you build his identity before going to the drawing board and fleshing out your ideas. It might help. I hope this was helpful, even a little bit. I'll leave you here, so bye everyone, and see you in the next one. In the meantime, keep creating. If this video was any helpful to you, you can help me a lot by liking down below or maybe even subscribing if you want to see more content like this or tutorials. Thanks and bye.